my name's Matthew Fedigan. I'm a building surveyor as well. Initially started off doing architecture, but actually came across to John Moore's. And I've been working with EC Harris through the graduate programme, probably through for about 6 years now in total. I think when I initially ended up on the graduate scheme with EC Harris, there was a fair bit of advertising through some professional bodies, so whether that's the RICS or the RIBA and courses, and bodies like that really. They advertise various placements through the universities as well. I think the key really is getting in there early and making sure your application sort of stands out as far as possible from other graduates, which if you're applying, from all over the country and internationally in some cases, certainly for work in the UK. That's how I've sort of progressed into EC Harris. I think the key differentiator with EC Harris for me compared to a number of other employers is that it was very much sort of work from day one. It's not that you're necessarily standing in the background. You're very much sort of pushed to the fore and asked to play that leading part, albeit in a structured way, so you're not thrown too far in the deep end. That's as important, I think, for the business as it is, for individuals trying to learn. A typical day, though, for me, I mean, it can range, from anything. Before Christmas, for instance, I was working in Dubai, and I think that's a really important point for students like LJMU, purely because I think in this market you have to be able to be flexible, you have to be willing to go abroad, and I think that's where some of the most exciting projects are in the world. Again, on a more local basis, I think the type of projects I've worked on initially when I first came focused around sort of capital building projects, those sort of new school building projects, things like that. I think that's been sort of reined in slightly, and I think some of the projects that we maybe used to work on, we've diversified as a number of businesses have, and my sort of area that I work in again at the moment includes things like renewables. There's that design element to it as well as building maintenance management programs for some of the leading clients in the northwest certainly, and abroad as well. In much the way that some of the businesses needs, and we've had to diversify, I think it's just as important for students when they're approaching various different businesses with their applications. The way that they approach businesses has had to change as well. So, for instance, some of the students I've spoken to, John Moore's Careers Fairs, for instance, that are involved in the World of Work programme, I mean, that's absolutely something that sets students apart. I think the ability, particularly when you're at those initial stages, to be gather additional information about organisational awareness and those sorts of things, knowing which people to speak to. For instance, when you're submitting a CV, it's not the case now that people have a nicely presented CV and it goes off. It's the case that people are researching who does that CV need to go to at the business, making it personal with a covering letter, and those are the sorts of things that actually can begin to sort of set your application apart. I think from other students, small efforts for each of those businesses, and understanding of the sectors that those businesses work in is absolutely key. I think at the initial stage when you're presenting yourself and an interview as well. An interview, I think an element of it is about necessarily being yourself and letting hopefully a gregarious sort of nature come through, and that you can communicate effectively with people, and all of these skills again that you have worked through with, I guess, the likes of WOW verifiers, through interview practice and interview technique. I mean, that's your opportunity to develop, to show that you can present well and develop and hone in on all of those skills that you've been acquiring over the years of your university life. So I think for me as well, in addition to what you were saying, I think it's about using your time wisely at the end of your university life. If you're at university, make use, I think, of the skills sessions that are available to you, and that way when you are applying, you're just that slight bit ahead, I think, of some of the other graduates in other universities. I think it was a very different time then. In the 5 years, in a grand scheme of things, it's not a massive amount of time, but clearly economically at the moment, it's quite significant. The market was very different. Employers were there wasn't quite as much competition as there is now. But still, having said that, it was still the same skill sets that you had to hone in on, be that through presentation. Initially, getting through to the right people with the CV. I think it's just about focusing and making sure that those basics are right. And there's no reason why you can't learn those, particularly with all of what's available to John Moore students, I think, at John Moore's while you're at university, even before you're at your final level stages. It's about showing that you have a drive and a passion, for what you're doing. I think a lot of universities, for instance, although you're educated certainly in the competency levels, I think that's great. You're moulded into a certain perspective, and I think it's important to be able to, articulate just you as an individual and what you're like, and how you would, begin to shape that organisation, in the long term and build your future there. I think the ability to innovate, depending on the various economic challenges that surround us at the moment, is a real key thing, and I think that's again something I think that John Moores are very, and the graduates from John Moores are very good at. I think it benefit them, exponentially. Really, I mean, my involvement when I was at John Moores, I was involved in the very first developmental stages. I think it was the first year final set, certainly, to go through that first year of the WOW programme. So it was in its early preliminary stages, but nonetheless, I think having those sort of that preparation coming out into the market, it's not that you sit your final exam then, and then it's that 6-month period when you sort of have to work out what you need to do to get to the next stage. It's a focused effort, a concerted effort, certainly through final year, and hopefully before that you're acquiring all of these skills, developing them, because it takes time. And then when you're fresh out into the marketplace, you should be well primed and well prepared to go to some of the best employers, and the top 3 international consultants like EC Harris, for instance. A really important thing for me in the past has been, even through university life, I think the graduates that have an edge tend to have networked well at university, and by that I don't necessarily just mean with the university peers. I mean, you've gone to your affiliate body, so whether it's the RICS in the case of building surveyors, RIBA for architects, and all of the others around the built environment faculty. I think having those links into industry, you're able to get feedback at a very, very early stage, and I think things like the WOW programme, for instance, if you can go then and get further interview training, you can develop your technique and develop how to articulate self-awareness, which is actually far more difficult sometimes than just necessarily being aware. It's actually getting that across in a positive way to employers when you come to interview. That actually can be quite challenging. And I think all the tools are there really for John Moore's graduates before they graduate. And I think it's those graduates that start earlier rather than see it as something that has to be done at a later stage to tick a box, that actually they're the ones that really sort of succeed and get through and make something of it.